Good Friday morning of the 28th week. I'm having a dickens of a time this week. I'm getting things all fouled up. I hope you could this is informal, so I wouldn't know how to erase and start over again anyway. So you're stuck with me. But guess what? It just really struck me. Because today's Friday, okay? The great warning of the gospel. The gospel warns us not to... well, anyway, see, I'm struggling again with it. Okay, whatever. It tells us be careful of the hypocrisy. Okay, be careful of hypocrisy. But what the really thing that struck me today is the feast of Saint Teresa of Avila, who was, I believe, died in 1562. She was a reformer. She and Saint John of the Cross formed the Discalced Carmelites. Great religious order. Great. See, that was the heart of the Renaissance. That was the heart of the Renaissance. And often religious orders emerge in a time when re-evangelization is necessary within the church herself, a revitalization within the church. And by God, Teresa of Avila and John of the Cross provided that. They're great mystics. They weren't political. They transcended that. See, the charismatic element of the church, it transcends the hierarchical structure. That's why they're the reformers. They're not part of the corruption. Religious orders have always been the nemesis, as it were, of the ordinariness and the corruption of the church. They always seem to emerge providentially. When the church is at its lowest moment, you see these powerful mystics appear. St. Francis, for instance, here in the heart of the Renaissance. In the heart of the very Renaissance, you've got Teresa of Avila, the mystical theology, and John of the Cross. I think of my own order, St. Paul, 300 years ago, at the heart of the Enlightenment. Here you have this charismatic order that preaches the crucified Christ, the antithesis of the Enlightenment. Okay? The church, the Holy Spirit seems to call upon the church from within the church to come alive and re-stimulate, reinvigorate the church through a passionate mysticism, a passionate one, a religion of the heart, recalling who and what is Christ, who and what is the church in the world. And also what I saw this week, and I have to say I'm embarrassed by this a little bit, and it's not my fault. It was when I looked at the text for the day and who are the saints of this, St. Kenneth is on October 11th. I have no idea who he is. But in the last 7 years, and maybe my book is that old, it probably is, that under Pope Francis, John the 23rd was made St. John the 23rd, okay? St. John, okay? And it's celebrated, his feast day is celebrated on October 11th. And the reason is that was the opening day, the opening session of the Second Vatican Council, which he had called. And that was not a Reformed council. That was St. John Paul's, not John Paul, St. John the 23rd, not John Paul. John the 23rd, way before John Paul II, okay? Was called to re-evangelize Europe, not to reform the church, but to re-evangelize Europe and to offer the gospel to the world, to go beyond Eurocentrism to global centrism, global Christianity. John the 23rd is the most important pope of the 20th century. Second, there's only one person immediately second him is Francis. They're globalists. They're not Eurocentrists. John the 23rd grew up there. He was a stretcher bearer in the First World War. He was a Vatican delegate, is a word, to Turkey and the Middle East, the Eastern states rather, Bulgaria and places such as, and hence he understood global Christianity and the need for global Christianity. A powerful saint. I'm so grateful to John the 23rd. And interesting, the first day of the council, 1962, which dramatically affected the self-perception of the church as a global community, as we de-Latinized it and globalized it through the liturgy and through our apostolic preaching. It was also my 21st birthday. My birthday was October 11th. I forgot, I should have mentioned it, but I did the 11th. I'm on that. In one ear and out the other, I skipped it. But I have to say that I had just turned 21. I was just a young man in the order. And then at that point in the order, it was the beginning of my what they call student life. I just took my vows. I thought my passionist life would be monastically lived within that deep, profound Latin culture, okay? The Roman culture. Within 3 years, it was radically changed. And I began to understand the life of the church. It isn't traditionalist in the sense of locked into a way. It is the traditional in the sense of handing on, traditio, handing on the past for the sake of the future. We are future-oriented under the guidance of the Spirit. If you don't believe that, you don't understand what happened in the 20th century. Who could have ever have predicted the Second Vatican Council? Nobody. The church was strong and confident in itself under Pius XII. It had survived the first two wars. You had world wars. You had to see the strength of the church at that time. In need of no reform. And yet, John the 23rd called a council. He saw something in his vision that required a transformational moment. We had to re-evangelize Western civilization and bring the gospel to the global community that was emerging with the speed of light. He was a visionary. He looked like he was a simple, potty little old guy, you know. He had a vision. He lasted all 1 year. He died of cancer the following year. Pope Paul VI took over. Saint Paul VI now. Huh? He was a saint. He had to guide it through the treachery of ecclesial politics that gave rise to the final documents of Vatican II, and then the emergence really of a rapidly growing global community of faith. You have to understand that. In our order, we're down to so few men left in the eastern western province, our two provinces alone. At the time of the council, we had 650 men in the province. We had so many young men coming in, we had to build a new seminary. By 1968, we closed it. We don't have 100 guys left in my province, and the average age has to be 75. Oh, well. And the western province has half that number, maybe. But if you look in the Orient where we are growing, in China and Asia and Vietnam, there you have vocations. We just ordained our first passionist from China. Tomorrow has an Eastern look to it. The Asian community may very well be the guiding force of Christianity in the future. Doesn't look it, does it, when you quickly look at it? You watch. The seed is sown, the blood of the martyrs. Our passionists, we had 4 men buried in China back to the 20s. 3 were gunned down. 1 died of typhoid or malaria or something. Their blood is in the ground. It'll bring fruit. Yeah. And that's when you start to believe in the Teresa and Avila's and the St. John. You believe in the mystical vision of the church, not its bureaucracy, not its structures. Essential as those structures and authorities are, and they are essential. I am never going to say we don't need structure. A completely charismatic church would have been out of existence no later than Paul, St. Paul, okay? A dime a dozen fanatics, okay? They don't even last their own breath. Structure, authority, yes, the guidance, the gardening of the gospel through the magisterium, guidance into the sacraments, etc. And the structure and the authority over the sacraments is essential. But you got to have heart. You got to have Teresa. You got to have John of the Cross. You got to have Paul of the Cross. You have to have the mystics, the Francises, those people who are driven by vision. You need the St. John the 23rd to see something, to glimpse something mystically about a global belief, a global community, and then make it happen. With the guidance of God and the Spirit, despite often resistance, colossal resistance, nonetheless, boom, it happens. The church does not belong. The church does not belong to the hierarchy. It belongs to Christ himself. It's his church. We are his servants. John the 23rd was a great servant. Francis is a great servant. They believe in tomorrow. The gift of life, the gift of the Holy Spirit, they believe in tomorrow. And that vision will impact and has already impacted the world. We live in an amazing time. We do live in the age of a new global Christianity, a new spirit with a capital S.